Now, looked at from these angles then, creative partnerships opened up a discursive space to continue discussion of the ideas raised in the NACI report. It brought new players into the field of educational policy making. It allowed New Labour to respond to pressure from lobbyists of the left and the right, people who were concerned about the corrosion of childhood or the general grindery of schooling. It seamlessly introduced high and popular cultural arts practices alongside one another, and that had previously been a difficult move to pull off in the English educational policy. And it did this in tandem with boosting vocationalism, enterprise, and the creative industries. At the heart of this policy making was a very careful attention to language. Artists became creative practitioners. Creativity smoothed out disciplinary and sectoral obstacles. Arts Council regions, conferences, and interactive websites represented the local in national debates. CP's branding and bold multimodal texts signified a shift in style which was reinforced by new modalities of governance through the informal authority of networks rather than the hierarchies and bureaucracy of government. The ghosts of the Plowden Committee, who had haunted the NACI report writers, were replaced by partnership boards and local networks facilitated by creative agents. And by means of these recontextualizations, creativity becomes an element in the vision of reform to which the government insists that all schools must be committed. Dialogism, tentativeness, doubt, and equivocation yield to the linguistic certainties of zero tolerance when the school improvement agenda is broached. Objectives that are, to quote Tony Blair, clear, right, and achievable. Schools can become at the same time improved, creative, manageable, inclusive, collaborative, and high-performing. The creative and cultural programme in schools had its part to play in New Labour's vision for this quantum leap in education that they spoke about. New Labour's focus on issues of social inclusion was markedly different from Old Labour's social democratic concerns. New Labour has been concerned to see marginalised, disaffected or deprived communities included in the mainstream of cultural activity. Art and culture are seen as means of directly addressing social problems. So the creative partnerships, specifically focused in economically deprived areas, are intended to yield soft integrationist outcomes for schools in challenging social and economic circumstances, as well as academic, artistic and vocational improvements. So, by 2008, well into New Labour's third term of office, the tone was definitely less tentative, and the benefits of the creativity agenda to school improvement were being proclaimed. Creative Partnerships was reported to be doing all of these things. And as the end of New Labour's third term in office grew nearer, the need to identify what was to succeed creative partnerships became more pressing. This meant agreeing on a definition on the language of creativity, agreeing on funding mechanisms, and the development of policy. So, being short on reports on the subject, the government commissioned another one, this time by Paul Roberts, at that time a senior official in the Improvement and Development Agency. Significantly, Roberts presented his review in 2006 as a response to the question about how Britain could become the world's creative hub. So the framing for the development of educational policy was economic and vocational. The nurturing of creativity was considered through the lens of existing government priorities: extended schools, new buildings, portfolio assessment, early years education, and vocational links with creative industries. And Roberts' main recommendation was that there should be a framework for monitoring progression in creativity, and that there was a need to create a more coherent creativity offer, which was to be brokered into schools. Meanwhile, Creative Partnerships decided it needed to resolve some of its debates about definitions by taking up the term creative learning as what it called a shorthand description for Creative Partnerships' contribution to school change, curriculum development, and teaching and learning practices. And in characteristic style, an edited booklet of articles both committed itself to this term creative learning and cast doubt upon the usefulness of it. And while Sefton Green argues that creative learning is awkward but maybe useful, the website redesignated CP as the government's flagship creative learning programme. So in November 2008, Creative Partnerships was reinvented, and a new independent organisation to be called Creativity, Culture and Education, or CCE, was launched with Paul Roberts as its chairman. The Arts Council has committed more than £75 million to fund CCE for the next 2 years. A cultural offer has been agreed with a parliamentary select committee, and CCE is going to run a scheme called Find Your Talent, designed to give young people at least 5 hours of high quality arts and culture every week. A creative development framework is going to monitor progression in creativity, and 30 schools have been given specialist funding and specialist status to be called schools of creativity, with the brief of leading, transforming practice and influencing the system as a whole. And when this CCE organisation, Creativity, Culture and Education, was launched on the website, Alan Davey, the Chief Executive of the Arts Council England, is quoted as in this way, as saying, "The Arts Council has nurtured the success of Creative Partnerships, which was an audacious move. It is now a natural progression for it to be run by an independent organisation." Paul Roberts talks about creative learning, helping young people develop the skills demanded by today's employers. So, to conclude, more than a decade into the New Labour project then, the natural place for creative and cultural education is in an independent organisation, to be promoted through specialist schools, rather than in the hands of the Ministry of Education, which oversees the entitlement to the education of all children in Britain. 12 years on, no one is concerned that the Labour Party will pursue radical libertarian educational goals or be blinded by socialist dogma. In 1997, the reinscription of creativity into the curriculum specifications evoked memories of a century that New Labour was keen to forget. By 2009, the policy contexts are very different. Understandings about curriculum, pedagogy, and the nature of teachers' work have changed so profoundly that creativity has been largely stripped of its idealistic, emancipatory, or anti-authoritarian connotations. Indeed, it could be argued that the association of creativity with the vocational and with different forms of entrepreneurialism has been very much in line with Tony Blair's notion of using the creative talent of our people to build an enterprise economy for the 21st century.